Okay, thank you everyone for joining. So today we will be using a collaborative notes document, which I will share the link to here. And it will be, okay. So just to introduce myself, I'm Navina. I'm a PhD student at the University of Washington. My pronouns are she or they. I've been volunteering for 2 years on the SIGCHI Development Fund Committee, working on the Gary Marsden Travel Awards, which serve to streamline and iterate upon the previous array of travel awards that SIGCHI offered. On that, I was working with Vikram Kamath, another student volunteer, as well as Luigi De Rusis, who's the AC for Community Support. And previously, when Neha was chairing that committee as well. So just to get us started, I will go over the code of conduct very quickly, which you could also refer to on the document. Please feel free to add your pronouns if you're comfortable doing so on Zoom. The session will be recorded. And we also encourage constructive criticism and critique. And in doing so, please be hard on systems and soft on each other, show sensitivity to those speaking, and also keep in mind that not everyone has access to the body's knowledge or communities that you do, and there are differences and material limits that must be respected. And please raise your hand if you wish to speak and you'll be called on. And otherwise, it would be great to keep the mic off to just maintain understandability of the audio. And when you do speak, please begin by stating your name, pronoun, and institution if you can. And finally, if there's any issues of harassment or discrimination, feel free to directly message me. So to provide some more context as to why we're here, hopefully you've heard it's SIGCHI's 40th anniversary, and we're here to reflect on SIGCHI's journey so far, as well as our future aspirations for the HCI community. And the themes that arise here will shape the priorities of the upcoming Futuring SIGCHI committee led by Luigi and me. And the emphasis of this committee will be bringing researchers and practitioners together to create a supportive and close-knit community and to lead impactful and creative initiatives that prefigure desired futures in HCI. And so in this session, we want to look to the past to ensure that the committee is building on existing efforts and SIGCHI members' rich knowledge of how we built this community. And we'll also envision futures where fresh creative energy could potentially have the most impact. Coming from my experience working on the Gary Marsden Travel Awards, these are very essential, I think, to creating any community infrastructure. And just to quickly walk you through our process, normally I'd use the slide, but because of time, I'll just describe it very quickly. So this was a 2-year-long project that I worked on along with others, where we started with surveying the community to understand their experience with the previous iteration of the travel awards, after which, at the height of the pandemic, we iterated on the travel awards and started supporting virtual travel or registration waivers. And then in early 2021, we started starting to enlist a travel agency work that is still ongoing so that we can cover more upfront costs for awardees. And then recently, just last month, we started supporting physical travel. And so through this process, we learned a lot about community needs. So for example, the need for flexible deadlines, concerns about the burden of reimbursement. For example, some people needing to take out loans in order to pay the high upfront costs for conferences, lack of institutional support for reference letters, particularly if you're between institutions, and perhaps that's when you need the travel award the most. And even once we iterated on the travel awards once after the survey, we learned, it was still an ongoing process. And at some point we learned that there was financial need beyond students and early career researchers. And we further opened up the eligibility criteria for the awards. And over the course of having these, over the course of administering the travel awards, we had to have a number of flexible policies and really compassionate policies that accommodated needs due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the economic downturns and the impact of war, lack of visa interview slots. So these very real needs that the program had to be very responsive to. And then we also had to deal with a number of requirements, for example, navigating ACM rules to disperse funds, finding creative ways to cover upfront costs, and as I mentioned, the ongoing work to set up the travel agency. So hopefully this gives a sense of the types of the kind of project work that will be required in this committee, as well as the ways that we want to both learn from the past and also consider be responsive to needs in the future. And so today we'll discuss 3 areas of impact that form SIGCHI's current focus. And so that will be community, so how members develop a sense of belonging and equitably participate in the field. Knowledge, so how we go through the process of producing knowledge and sharing it via conferences and publications and other modes. And also global participation, so how we support local chapters, regional committees, and their representation in global SIGCHI events and initiatives. And all of these have been building on existing efforts, so previous open sessions, and we'll also have a number of events upcoming at CHI 2022. For example, a number of SIGs and events around these topics, and I will link to those at the end as well. So in order to get started, our first question will be around this theme of community and wanting to understand how we've gotten here. And so we'll start with this question posted in the chat. How has your sense of community within HCI changed over time? And what do you wish it could be like in 40 years? Feel free to comment in the chat, raise your hand to speak, or contribute to the notes as well. We might start off with just thinking about how did sense of community feel like when you first joined the field? Taimon, do you want to go ahead?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Well, thank you for the invitation, Susan, especially. And it's something that I've been thinking quite a bit. SIGCHI is turning 40, and my first SIGCHI was more than 20 years ago. So I've been thinking how it was and how it will be and how it's been recently. And to me, the most important thing has been the increase in diversity. The first time that I went there, even as a student volunteer, it was a great sense of community, but I saw very few people like me. And that has been changing in all the years that I've been coming to CHI, and that's been great. So to me, just the fact that there's more variety of cultures, languages, is super, super important. And I think that that's something that has to be even more strengthened. Thank you.
Thank you, Timo. That's, I mean, a great reflection, I think, and just good to hear in general. And Keith, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Yeah. Hello. I think I probably joined SIGCHI around 1988 when I was working in the university. About 10 years later, I went into industry, and I may be one of the few industry folks that's still a SIGCHI member, still trying to hang out, still trying to connect. So to me, it's that part that you put in the document around connecting researchers and practitioners, academic and industry. We've had splits over the years of different groups, and sometimes they come back and talk, and sometimes they seem even more separate. So for me, living out in industry for the past 20 some years, I go to user experience events, and folks don't even know that SIGCHI exists, let alone even, appreciating what it does, right? So to me, that's the biggest gap over the years. And Susan and I have worked over, every once in a while we would get together and try to put some effort into that specific thing. It doesn't seem like we get very far. And so it's one of those things, to me, that's central, because for me as a practitioner, I can't be a member of a profession unless we're connected to academia, right? I just have a job, right? I have a job, but I don't have a profession. So I think that's something very important that we need to fix.
Can you actually say a bit more, Keith, about what you just mentioned about you can't be a member of a profession unless you're connected to academia?
Yeah. So to me, I certainly have a job. I've made a career out of being a user experience practitioner, right? But just I don't have I need a body of knowledge to draw upon. I need to apply the research. I need to, sometimes I need that ivory tower academic credential, behind me, out in industry. I'm competing with other people in jobs that, that are more established, that have, they've been around for hundreds of years. And so people respect them. I mean, I was just basically giving therapy to a friend over Slack this morning, because his job as a user experience designer sucks, because everybody thinks that they can do his job better than him, right? And so again, like, he understands the research and psychology, but for everybody else, he just makes pretty pictures, and anybody can make pretty pictures. So I think there's that from the credentialing side, from the credibility side, but also just from being a good practitioner. Over the years, I've spent a lot of time, going to conferences, reading ACM literature and so on. And on the job, somebody said, "Keith, you're really smart. How'd you get so smart?" Like, because I'm reading the HCI literature, right? And so it really does help you be a better practitioner. Unfortunately, right now with the job market, it seems like, somebody will get hired whether they're good at it or not, which then, is this cycle that then makes it harder for other people who are really good at it. So again, to me, there's a sort of the split between the academics and the practitioners. Long ago, we all went to the same CHI conference, and then as things grew, things sort of fragmented. We've had some efforts over the years to try to get back together, but it doesn't seem to stick. And, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't all have to be, everybody hugging around a campfire, but there's certainly lots of areas where we could be more unified as an overall, again, like as an actual, field that has solid research that people actually put into practice, and people aren't just making it up as they go. But yeah, Susan, you can say the same thing in about a quarter of the words, I think.
No, I thought that was very eloquent. And I want to say that one of the things that I'm going to be trying to do this year is develop partnerships. Obviously, Keith, you and I still need to talk. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
But, getting the user experience professionals and SIGCHI kind of together, as well as in other parts of the world, et cetera. I mean, I'm really open for any ideas that you guys have about organizations that you think would benefit from a little SIGCHI fairy dust, and we would also benefit from their fairy dust. So
Yeah, and we've talked about different economic models before and things like that. So I think there's lots of things that we can try, and you know, the world we work in changes every 5 or 10 years anyway. So it's not that there aren't lots of things that we can do. Some of it's just sort of concentrating on it, and again, even on the practitioner side, I get pushback around like, you know, I'm too busy doing it every day. I don't have time to actually read a journal, right? And so let's, well, then how do we, you know, how do we convince them that it's worthwhile? How do we write some research for fellow researchers? We certainly can't stop that one, but then, you know, what's the most important research, you know, like in the knowledge sharing category, right? What's the most important research that we can make it more digestible for practitioners so that they can build upon that knowledge base. Again, you know, UXPA over the years to try to body of knowledge, it didn't go anywhere. So I've got lots of the history written down, but I'm more interested in the you know, the next 40 years, right? Be like, yeah, this is what we tried before and it didn't work. Well, the world's different. Maybe we try it a third or fourth time, or maybe we just let the young people take over and do it better, right?
Thank you. And just looking at the chat, definitely lots of agreement. Taimo says, so true. There's a huge divide between academic and industry people, at least in Latin America. So this is definitely a global issue. Neha also posed the question, are there other fields within computing that have done a better job of keeping the two, research and practice, partnered?
I'm not sure. Some people use the medical field as an example, where like, you know, people get paid to read academic research and rewrite it for the doctors out in the field, right? So that's one business model within computing. I don't draw from other parts of computing to come up with ideas, right? I'm drawing ideas from other professions, from the humanities, from lots of other things, when I try to cook up better ways for us to do it. But that doesn't mean they're not out there. That doesn't mean we shouldn't work with ACM. I'm sure ACM has some of those good things that we could already take advantage of. Things like interactions, to me, is a great example that it's published by ACM. And that's like the one thing that I would love to get inside in every practitioner's hands, right? That's a good bridge thing, right? How to actually do that is different, but so I think we do have some things that we can build upon. Yeah, and again, medicine is a possible one. They figured it out because otherwise people die. So.
It's great that you mentioned interactions, actually. I wasn't thinking about that, but it totally makes sense that that's a good example to think of.
Right. Yeah. Again, it's got applicability to it, right? When I find things in it, it's again, you know, they have articles and they have different series on, you know, applying it in industry. But it does come from that more scientific and that sound base versus, you know, an article on that same topic. I could, you know, I'll find it written on Medium or written even in UX Matters, and it's either half as good or a quarter as good or just terrible, right? So again, being able to say, you know, if you really want the best information on a topic, start with interactions. If you find it in there, great. If it's not in there, then go ahead, definitely check the UXPA magazine. That's pretty good too. If you're going to go off on Medium, there might be great stuff there. We're just not sure because that's a different model, right? It's not a peer-reviewed model. It doesn't have, you know, it could be great, but it could be terrible. So, you know, when people ask me what to read, I have to sort of give them these layered answers because I can't read everything. You know, sure, let me read an article that I'll tell you whether it's good or not, in my opinion, but I can at least give them some layered answers. If you see it in interactions, I'm pretty sure that the editors have done a lot of work to make sure it's high quality, right?
And Susan also mentioned in the chat, originally it was formed for practitioners, which is actually really great to know that is
Yeah,
literally.
yeah. Back in the day, Stephen Pemberton, right? One of those practitioners that was really involved in SIGCHI. And again, it still has some of that value. It seems to maybe drift a little bit, but again, I still read it every time it comes out. But it's also, not as easy to share a link to it when I tweet about it, right? Because I actually have to it's like in 4 different places. Sometimes it's more open and sometimes it's more closed. But yes, but we could start with interactions. Something concrete would be how to get interactions read by more people. I think at some point Don Norman made a comment where he posted something in interactions, and then he published the same thing in some online magazine. I forget what it was, whatever, but he had like 0 people commented on it when it was in interactions, and 1,000 people commented on it when it was in so-and-so design online magazine or whatever, right? So so part of it is obviously nobody was reading it in interactions, or the right people weren't reading it, or maybe the wrong people were reading it somewhere else and they just like to comment on it. I'm not sure, but I'd love to see me like commenting on interactions articles instead of like right now everything seems to be like on LinkedIn, right? So it's like, okay, I can comment on LinkedIn, but that's also a free for all, right? So but again, I think the point being, how do we start connecting the researchers and the practitioners for the benefit of all of us?
There have been, well, this is a really great point that you brought up, Keith and Susan. I'm wondering if you can touch on this in your conversation with Stephen Pemberton at CHI as well, to have this discussion.
Oh, yes,
in your session.
That was part of the plan. And Stephen was, as you probably may remember, editor-in-chief of Interactions for a number of years. So we've got some good stuff cooked up on that. I'm very excited other people. Go ahead.
Me too. I was curious. So, CSCW, I don't know, Keith, how well you know the CSCW conference, but in the last few years, at least I think a couple of years, they've tried to encourage blog posts for the research papers. And not everybody has written them, but anyone who has wanted to write a blog post, they've been welcome to publish it on the CSCW medium. I wonder what you think of that model, because it is peer-reviewed research, but it is written expressly for people who are not going to go and read the full paper.
Yeah. Let's give it a shot. I think I went to one CSCW conference in my life when it was a half an hour from my house, right? Because it was close by, right? Because that's not my research area. That's not my area of practice. But yeah, let's find that community of academics, and let's find the right community of practitioners who are interested in the same thing. Find ways for them to hang out in person, find ways for them to hang out online, find ways for them to write things for each other. So yeah, let's do it.
I mean, it sounds doable, but I guess it might be a chicken and egg thing. So maybe one thing has to come before the other, right? So maybe people will have to do it without being able to see this very interwoven community before they actually do it. Sorry, I'm talking too much. Susan.
Sorry, I'm talking too much, just not with my microphone on. One of the things that we did at one point with, and I don't know if it's still happening in the user experience professionals journal, usability, what is it called? Journal of Usability Studies. Each paper had to have 3 takeaways written specifically for practitioners, and they were at the top. And they seem to really help quite a lot. So maybe there are some ways that we can help interpret research, because I agree, I think it's really important that we have practitioners who are enlightened, that who really know. And it's equally important to have academics who are engaged and who know the kinds of problems that would be most helpful to practitioners if they were able to express And I know we have academics here too, so I wonder what some of them think about this.
I think also, I mean, analogously, if there are other communities that people feel that they need to cross boundaries to communicate with, I think that's also an enlightening discussion to have. I know like activist communities, community-based organizations, some of these issues exist as well.
Yeah, yeah. To me, it's not just academic and practitioner, but it's right. It has some other spin to it, right? This is they have something else of interest, and sometimes that could just be local, right? I've seen that it's a lot easier to do things locally, right? So it's like, hey, here's the academics in Malaysia. I'll just pick that as a country, and the practitioners in Malaysia. Let's get them hanging out. They don't have to get in a plane to fly each other and so on, right? So I could see this being more grassroots driven, right? Maybe we tie that into local chapters, and we just, we encourage local SIGCHI chapters to reach out to their local practitioner communities, which are literally across the street. But one is on this platform and the other's on a different platform, and they don't, they literally don't talk to each other. So again, I think we're going to have to attack it from multiple things. It won't be just a couple bullet points in a journal, but so I see it more as like a theme that cuts through every little thing that we do, right? So, in addition to, building a committee for the CSCW conference, let's say, like, oh, when I check the random website, it's like this is great, but it's, only the academics have the time to volunteer to be on the committee to put on the conference. And so when I show that to the practitioners, they say, well, it must not be for me because none of my friends are help putting it on, right? Yet those same people will go register a random domain and they'll start up their own UX conference out of the blue and do a ton of work. It's like, why did you do all that work? You could have just piggybacked with the academics and put on a great show with a lot less work. So some of it, I think, is just mindset.
Yolanda.
Yeah, I apologize for not being on camera. It's late and I'm eating dinner, so I don't want to eat in front of everyone. It's been a process for me in terms of feeling like a community member. And I think part of the issues are CHI is so large, and there are so many people from around the world that attend this conference. And so I'm remembering the last time when CHI was in Scotland, and you're traveling overseas, and yes, you're excited to be in a different country if that's not your native country, but at the same time, it would be nice if we could have almost like a community feel where you could easily find small groups that want to, say, do an activity together. Now, I sort of had to go out of my way to talk to people who I knew were attending CHI to say, hey, let's do something locally. Let's go to Edinburgh and check out the castle or things like that. But you want that same kind of spirit and attitude, even amongst the conference. And so for those who don't know me, I am a Black woman. And so I know the reason why I'm bringing this up is that for years, I felt like an outsider. I say I probably still feel like an outsider sometimes, but I have been working to be more involved. And so, yes, I'll serve as an external reviewer or serve as an AC, but it would be nice to have those pockets where you could have almost like a check-in station for people who just have similar interests, who want to hang out and do something. I think those things go a long way towards building community.
That sounds lovely. I absolutely agree. And Tim also put in the chat, this CHI, we are organizing Global Plaza, something conceived to bolster the creation of communities during conference and beyond. Tim, did you want to say anything more about Global Plaza? And...
Yeah, first, I totally relate with Yolanda is saying. Again, just when I hear a word in Spanish, I just flock to that group of people or person, and a community begins to be formed, right? So you can see the plaza behind me. So the idea is to have this in this time in a virtual mode. So a space, this time by invitation, where people from around the globe can come together and just hang out. And starting with speaking who you are, what you do, what you like, and trying to form some sort of bond. We already are seeing that despite this being in a virtual environment, communities start to be formed. The Latin people is coming together. We're actually going to have a Spanish session, Spanish in language Spanish, right? So, and I'm pretty sure that eventually there'll be something with the South Asia region, because there's quite a bit of people from that area, right? So yeah, communities is probably one of the best things to me of going to CAI. Just finding your people and meeting people from other cultures. That's super, super cool. And, oh, I still have the mic. So the Global Plaza initiative is something formed this time for the first time. So there was a survey that we contacted chapters to see if there was somebody interested. It is not a chapter initiative. So, but that was our first medium of reaching out. And after that, we started just to move around in Slack groups, Facebook groups, trying to just pass the voice that this was happening. Fortunately, we got funding from SIGCHI. So we are being able to fund registration for people, students from around the world, mostly students. Sometimes you might think that, well, $60 is not much, but it's impossible for many people from our region. So the fact that there's money for that is I assure you, life-changing, and that's awesome.
And just to go to the chat, Susan mentioned we're having a rest and recharge area at CAI where we can get to know each other. Neha says where you can rest and recharge your minds, bodies, and devices, as Susan says. Keith followed up on the comment about the Spanish session. We need Interactions magazine in Spanish too. And Yolanda followed up with absolutely in agreement. Susan, do you want to?
Yes. One thing I wanted to mention is that you're in luck. The final issue of Interactions this year is going to be devoted to SIGCHI turning 40. And as part of that, we are encouraging people to submit in whatever language they naturally speak and would like to. And we've had, the call has been translated so far into double byte languages, into Bangla, into Spanish and Italian, and etc. So if you have ideas about this, please see the call. I'll try to find it and put it in the chat if I can find it.
Thanks, Susan. Neha, do you?
Yeah, and just to add to what Susan said, one thing that we have been talking about, and Yolanda is here, so I was reminded, is that we have a certain number of articles that we can put together as part of the special issue. But Susan was also going to approach the other column editors and forum editors. I'm not sure what they're called, columns or forums, for that issue, for the last issue of the year, if there's similarly themed pieces that they might want to write for their columns, like looking to the past, looking to the future, that sort of thing.
Yes, Timel has added the link to the chat, so please feel free to take a look, consider writing something or share with others. Any other thoughts on sense of community, which communities you're a part of? Temo, do you want to go?
Yeah, just following on Keith Let's give mention of interaction in Spanish. I remember that one of my first interactions with interactions was being a translator. There was a body of people that were translating to Spanish articles, and that was fun. Maybe it would be a good idea to bring it back. I have students that would love to participate on that, for instance.
That sounds good to me. I wonder what it would cost the ACM to do that. I'm sure one question would be why only Spanish and why Spanish and not other. That always comes up, but it's worth bringing up, Susan. Maybe with the EICs.
Definitely. That's a really good point. And I was starting to say in the chat, I was the director of publications at UXPA for 6 years in between my SIGCHI terms. And one of the things we did with our practitioner magazine UX, called UX, was to have abstracts for each of the articles, and each abstract was then translated into 5 languages, so that it would be, people would know whether it was worth, translating the whole article. So that's another shorter, easier thing we might be able to do. Thank you very much, Keith.
I think to your question, Nabina, I was just having a conversation with somebody today when they were asking about SIGCHI and registration, and it became a conversation about registration rates and workshops and all that. And I was saying how, the SIGCHI Development Fund can cover it. But one thing that I'm always kind of surprised by is how few people know about the development fund. How few people will apply to it. How many people still think that Gary Martin Travel Awards is for students only, so they can't really apply to it. And I feel like even though the acceptance rate for these proposals is like 100%, still it doesn't really get enough subscription. And I'm wondering if anyone here has any thoughts on how we make that just more commonplace, so that there isn't any weight associated with, like I often hear people say that I would never have my students apply to the Gary Martin Travel Awards because they feel like, oh, that money is for people who need it. And my students, I can fund my students, or they would not, they would be taking money away from someone from the global south, and I don't want to do that. So I guess I'm asking, like, how to normalize that, how to publicize it enough so that it is common knowledge. Like, that's seems like a hard problem.
I guess I'm kind of curious about people's experiences with learning about SIGCHI. To me, that this goes back to just not even being aware of it before volunteering. Yeah, I guess I'm curious.
Yeah, is there anyone here who doesn't know what SIGCHI is or what SIGCHI does? I'm curious what people's understanding is actually of what SIGCHI does.
Yeah, when I talk to people in the industry, yeah, first it's just the awareness of, well, some of them are like, like even being aware that there is an academic profession behind what they just stumbled upon to as user experience. That's the revelation. Like, wow, I thought I met my tribe. The tribe is even bigger. Yes, there are people in universities that have been doing this for 30 years. Okay, fine. But then
40.
yes,
40.
yes. Well, not yes. So that's the first one. Again, just saying like this is a legitimate thing, and I run into it every day. I was at a local event here in Ohio over the weekend, and again, like within the state of Ohio, these jobs that we call user experience jobs or academic research jobs, they're not listed anywhere in the state of Ohio as a legitimate job. So like they can't even track that user research is one of the fastest growing professions in Ohio because it doesn't have a number that they can track it, right? So we've got some fundamental things because we're still very young as a profession and things change fast. And so first getting them to recognize that, then saying, okay, SIGCHI, how do you pronounce it? Okay, sorry, that's still a problem, right? So it's like, okay, then they say, well, what's ACM? Right. And again, for some people that I talk to in the UX profession, the fact that it's associated with something that's computer science oriented turns them off, right? Because they're coming from an industrial design background or for a humanities background or whatever, right? So I was like, oh, that's the computer science version of user experience. Where's the humanities version of it, right? And it's like, oh, come on, this technology is everywhere. We shouldn't have that division, but those are just lots of little hurdles, right? Those are all little hurdles that can be overcome. But then, I come from a computer science background, and when I talk to my computer science professors that I've known for a long time, they're still like, sorry, Keith, that's not real computer science. So there's that hurdle. So I've, my left leg is trying to do one hurdle, my right leg's trying to do the other hurdle. So.
Makes total sense. It's true. Why did you come up with this SIGCHI name, Susan, all of you? It's like so many people don't know that Kai is pronounced Kai, right? Like you have to be part of the crowd to know it.
Well, I wanted it to be SIG of HCI, but that sounds like SIGHIC. So everybody, decided on SIGCHI instead. But it's SIGCHI to support the HCI profession.
Imagine it could have been like ICH, like SIGCHI, if it was interactions between computers and humans. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, and again, I'm okay with it. The academic part has a slightly different name, and I want that name to be kind of steady, and stable long term, because right in the end, like again, you're not credible as an academic if you rename your journals every 5 years, right? So out in industry, we're renaming stuff every 5 years. So I want something that's kind of stable. So I don't think we should change the brand name or anything. We just have to deal with it, right? And we just have to build upon it. And but I think, more of, I discovered the SIGCHI grant and I applied for it for 24 hours of UX, and you gave it to me in a heartbeat, and that was great. And so even for me as a member, I had lost touch of all the things that you were doing, right? And so once even I think the pandemic helped, because then you started going online, and it's like, oh, well, I'm online for 8 hours a day. What's the 9th hour to catch up on SIGCHI, right? Whereas in the old model, it's, I can't make it to the Chi conference this year, therefore it's another year that I'm disconnected from SIGCHI, right? So I think if we start embracing the online things like we're doing right here, because like again, my cat's getting ready to jump on my keyboard, but I'm still here, and I think that helps with some of the different communities, right? Because it's expensive to fly people around the world to get the 20 people that are all interested in a topic together. Let's find a way to get them online for about a year, hanging out with each other. Then we'll fly them together, and then then it's much more richer experience, right? Because you'll already know everybody. Like Yolanda's example, like you'll already know everybody that you're there, and you don't have to work so hard once you get there. But I think it's the same old, again, everybody's busy in other things. So, how do you get their attention to let them know that you have that you have a service. I guess the answer today for the young folks is you have to do it on TikTok, and then they'll notice you.
It's really heartening to hear, actually. Like, I think a lot of what we talk about with things being online is like the fatigue of everything being online. But even in the last session, we also had people talk about how being online has really created a sense of community in some ways. So we only have about 2 minutes left. Thank you, everyone, for all of the comments and suggestions and experiences. I will just leave you with a couple of links. So one is to apply to the Futuring SIGCHI committee through the open call. We would love to have students and early career professionals as project leaders and more senior researchers as mentors. I also shared a link to all of the SIGCHI events that will be happening at CHI 2022. A lot of them will be related to, hybrid conferences, local chapters and bringing them together. And a lot of the themes that we talked about today, also the SIG on equity talks and where to go from here. So please do attend, and thank you.
Can I ask how many people here will be actually at CHI? If you can raise your hand.
I'll be there.
Okay. I guess 6 or 9 people. Very cool. Susan, did you want to say something? Or was that just raising your hand?
Yeah, that was raising my hand.
Okay. Do you want to say any last words?
Well, I'm extremely excited to hear the passion for practitioners. Thank you. We felt left out for a long time, but I think that the better that practitioners can work with academics, the better it'll be for everybody. And I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited about SIGCHI turns 40. And I guess I should probably go eat my dinner now, huh?
Thank you, Susan. Thanks everyone for joining, and